that makes more immediate sense to us. One possibility is to focus on Plenty Coups' claim that after the buffalo went away, the hearts of my people fell to the ground, and they could not lift them up again. As he puts it, there was little singing anywhere. This might suggest a psychological interpretation. After the buffalo went away, after they were confined to a reservation, the Crow people became depressed. Things ceased to matter to them. It was for them as though nothing happened. This psychological interpretation is given added support by the author's account of Plenty Coups adding sorrowfully, "Besides, you know that part of my life as well as I do." In general, it is an astonishing claim for anyone to say that another person knows a part of his adult life as well as he himself does. Although we may be corrected in various ways by others, we take ourselves to have authority when it comes to the narratives of our own lives. Plenty Coups seems to be abdicating this authority when it comes to this period. Indeed, he seems to suggest that anyone, not just the author, who saw what happened when the buffalo went away, would be competent to tell that part of his life as well as he could. That is, any competent third-person observer would know all there was to know. This suggests that, according to Plenty Coups, there is no importantly first-person narrative to tell of this period. It is as though there is no longer an I there. This strange thought is made sense of by saying, Plenty Coups is depressed, or he is giving voice to the depression that engulfed his tribe. This interpretation has the merit of making sense, and it is plausible. Plenty Coups might have been giving voice to a malaise that infected his tribe. The interpretation thus fits what philosophers call the principle of humanity, that we should try to interpret others as saying something true, guided by our own sense of what is true and of what they could reasonably believe. But note, we have gained plausibility in interpretation by changing the subject matter. Ostensibly, Plenty Coups is making a claim about the world, that after a certain point nothing happened. We have interpreted him as saying something true by taking him to be expressing something about his psyche and the psyches of his fellow Crow tribesmen. This may fit the principle of humanity, but there is a question of whether it fits Plenty Coups' humanity. Might he not be giving utterance to a darker thought, one that is more difficult for us to understand? If so, then the psychological interpretation is in too much of a rush. If he is talking about the Crow people becoming depressed, we can understand him in a minute and move on. But if he is talking about happenings coming to an end, how can we interpret him as saying something true? Certainly, there is evidence to suggest that Plenty Coups was not depressed, and thus that we ought to interpret him in some other way. When we consider the rest of his life, it is extraordinary how active Plenty Coups was. And while it is true that some depressed people can keep busy as a way of warding off the experience of depression, there was a kind of enthusiasm in Plenty Coups' activity that belies this interpretation. He avidly took up farming life and urged other members of his tribe to do so. With apparent pride, he displayed his crops at agricultural shows and won prizes. He was active in bringing other Crow chiefs together to form a united front in negotiating with the U.S. government. As a young leader, he traveled to Washington, D.C. as the head of a Crow delegation that successfully lobbied to prevent a bill that would appropriate more Crow land from coming to the Senate floor. This was the first of several trips he made to Washington, defending the rights of the Crow. Plenty Coups visited George Washington's house at Mount Vernon and became fascinated with the idea of donating his own home to the nation. It is now a state park in Montana. And in 1921, at the national ceremony to establish the tomb of the unknown soldier in Arlington National Cemetery, Plenty Coups was chosen to represent the Indian Americans who had fought in World War I. He actively encouraged young Crow to acquire the white man's education and even to be open to their religion. These do not seem to be the acts of a depressed person. Yet this is the period of which Plenty Coups